Hello and welcome to Time About the Movies Flashback. Today we're flashing back to April 15th, 1988. We have 5 movies to look at today, so let's go ahead and get right to it. We'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, Dennis Hopper's directorial effort, Colors, starring Sean Penn and Robert Duvall.
Colors does for the inner-city cop what Platoon did for the foot soldier in Vietnam. Dennis Hopper is a genius, says Michael Medvedev's sneak previews. A revelation, says Gene Siskel. 2 thumbs up from Siskel and Ebert. Urgent, honorable, you can't take your eyes off it. David Anson, Newsweek. Sean Penn. Robert Duvall. A Dennis Hopper film. Colors, rated R. Starts Friday at a theater near you.
Robert Duvall plays an experienced LAPD officer, and his rookie partner is Sean Penn. They try to stop the gang violence between the Bloods, Crips, and Hispanic street gangs in this film. And it basically relaunched Dennis Hopper's directorial career. He had directed a couple movies between Easy Rider and this movie, the last movie, and Out of the Blue, which weren't the biggest successes overall. But this film was definitely a big hit, and it would inspire discussion over its depiction on gang life and gang violence in general. And it's a pretty damn good movie. It's a film where, you know, both of these guys, Robert Duvall, Sean Penn, 2 different generations of terrific actors coming together and showing, especially Sean Penn, who was only a few years off of Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and basically showing everybody that, hey, this guy can actually act, even though technically he got in trouble for making this film. On a year before this movie came out, he actually got sentenced to prison for 33 days for punching an extra on the set of the movie, and basically was taking photos without his permission. And keep in mind, this is back in the 1980s, so this was not unusual to see somebody taking pictures from this. This is unusual back then for someone to take pictures on the set, but yeah, Sean Penn kind of really screwed himself over, especially considering he went to jail for a month and almost over an entire month, I should say, because of this. But it doesn't really change the movie, his performance in the movie overall. The movie is really good, and it works because of those 2 performances overall. It's a really good police thriller, and kind of was an indication of what was to come for police films in general. Like, it does take itself very seriously, and it is a dark, gritty film in general. And you've got some really good talent all around here, not just Penn and Duvall, but Maria Conchita-Alonso, Don Cheadle in one of his early film roles, Glenn Plummer, Damon Wayans is in this, Leon Robinson, Tony Todd, Mario Lopez. I mean, there is a lot of notable names in here. Jack Nance, Clark Johnson. It's a really good film. It's a film that definitely is kind of a precursor to some of the darker police films we'd be getting down the road after this point forward. And like I said, it really elevated Dennis Hopper's directorial career back on track after a couple of misfires with the last movie, Out of the Blue. Really good movie. I can't recommend it enough. If you haven't seen Colors, definitely check that one out. So that's Colors. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Disney's Return to Snowy River. I'm sorry, it's The Man from Snowy River 2, The Adventure Continues, or by the other title it went by, the Return of the Man from Snowy River 2, The Adventure Continues, while being a menace to society while drinking your juice in the hood, South Central. Clearly I made that last one up, but you get the idea. This thing had a ton of different titles. I mean, it was called another title in the UK, The Untamed, but here's something of noteworthiness here. It was released here in the US by Disney. However, in its original native land, Australia, guess who put it out? The place that it's that's now owned by Disney, 20th Century Fox. So yeah, before the Fox-Disney merger, they were already working on a project together back in 1988, and there was this film. This is a sequel to the 1982 movie of the same name, The Man from Snowy River, and in this film, I can get the plot synopsis up here. You have young Jim Craig returning to the Australian high country after being away herding the horses he caught and sold, in order to provide a stake for the future. He finds things quite different than when he left. His girlfriend Jessica Harrison is being pursued by a rich suitor. Jessica's father wants her out of her life, and the residents of the high country are being driven out by the wealthier, lower class ranchers. Jim definitely has his work cut out for him. I really don't know, to be honest with you, I really don't know too much about these movies. I've never seen... Oh, excuse me. I've never seen the original Man from Snowy River, nor have I seen this movie. Ryan Dennehy's in it. He's in here replacing the role played by Kirk Douglas. That's really all I got for you. Like I said, I haven't seen this movie. I haven't seen the original, so I can't really tell you if it's good or not. But I did not know this was originally a Disney release. I mean, technically it isn't, but it eventually became one in the U.S. But I'm just kind of killing time here. Like I said, I haven't seen this movie, so I can't really say if it's any good or not. So, came out this weekend. Acknowledge it. Move on. That is The Man from Snowy River 2. So let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, which is Appointment with Death.
We're trapped. No, I have until midnight, Garner. Peter Ustinov stars as Hercule Poirot in Agatha Christie's Appointment with Death. At least one of them is very guilty indeed.
So you have Emily Boynton, played by Piper Laurie, who's the stepmother to the three Boynton children, and mother to Geneva, played by Amber Brazier. Emily blackmails the family lawyer Jefferson Coe, played by David Soul, into destroying the second will of her late husband, which would free the children from her dominating influence. She takes herself and the children on vacation to Europe and the Holy Land. In Jerusalem, you find Hercule Poirot, played here by Sir Peter Ustinov, who meets up with a woman friend played by Jenny Seagrove, Dr. Sarah King. She falls in love with Raymond Boynton, played by John Charleski, to Emily's disapproval. Lady Westholme, played by Lauren Bacall, her secretary, and Cope are following them too. The children learn about the second will, and Emily succeeds in rubbing the rest the wrong way, causing much hatred towards her, and at a dig, everyone wonders about the camp, and Emily is found dead poisoned, and that brings in Hercule Poirot to investigate the case. Now, Peter Ustinov's Hercule Poirot was actually in a couple of other movies beforehand here. You know, Death on the Nile, Evil Under the Sun, 13 at Dinner, Dead Man's Folly, Murder in the Three Acts, and in the original, the Murder on the Orient Express, all the way back in 1974, he was in that film as well as other numerous TV adaptations. So this would be the last version of this character that Poirot would play. This is also a Golden Globus film, Canon Films, and that pretty much should tell you everything you need to know about this. I mean, the Michael Winner directed, who also did the Death Wish movies, and it's fine for what it is. I mean, considering what Canon Globus and Canon Films usually do, this isn't some of the worst stuff they've done. And Peter Ustinov makes a pretty good Hercule Poirot, and I've seen the original Murder on the Orient Express. It's a very good film. Good cast in this film in general, too. Not only Lauren Bacall, but Carrie Fisher, John Gielgud, Haley Mills. I mean, a lot of good talent involved in here, and a good mystery in general. This is actually based off of the 1938 Agatha Christie book, Appointment with Death. And, of course, there's been a ton of Hercule Poirot stories by Agatha Christie, and it's been made into some recent films as well, including A Haunting in Venice, most recently, Death on the Nile, and, of course, the 2017 Murder on the Orient Express. Hercule Poirot is a very interesting character, and a very intriguing character in general, that anytime you see him on screen, it's usually in a very intriguing mystery, and Peter Ustinov plays the role very well. He makes that character his own, and it's really some of the best things that carry these films in general, even when they're not the best overall. And for that, I gotta give this movie a lot of credit. Like I said, it's a Canon film, a Golden Globus film. For me to say that this is not a so bad it's good movie, and more of a, it's actually kind of a fun movie, it's a huge step for Canon when you really think about it. I mean, it's a film that is definitely trying its best to actually entertain somebody, and it works pretty well because everyone's very committed to what they're doing, and I think it works pretty well for what it does. I definitely say check it out. It's a good little film, Appointment with Death. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, which is Plain Clothes. So Arliss Howard plays this cop who He basically has to prove his brother's innocence, and he enrolls in high school again, dealing with crushes, bullies, humiliation, popularity swings, and quirky teachers and staff to find the real murderer. So it's 21 Jump Street if it was a comedy before it actually became a comedy. But the difference is between 21 Jump Street and this is that 21 Jump Street was actually made into a good comedy. This one certainly was not. This is directed by Martha Coolidge, who's directed some decent films, and this is definitely not one of them. And Scott Frank wrote this. Scott Frank, if I'm not mistaken, that's the guy that wrote Out of Sight and Logan. So, yeah, what the hell happened here? And cast is pretty good in general. George Wentz also in this movie. I mean, he was on Cheers, the most popular show at the time. Diane Ladd, Seymour Cassell, Abe Vigoda, Robert Stack, Alexander Powers, Lauren Dean in one of his early film roles, Harry Shearer, Reginald Bell Johnson. There's a good cast in general here, but this film was just not that good, and basically comes down to what I said at the beginning. It's 21 Jump Street if they made the comedy when the show was popular, when the show was made around this time. The reason why 21 Jump Street worked back then was because it was a high school drama and actually had good actors who could play undercover cops in high school and be high school students at the same time. This is not a good film. I mean, it's a movie that is ridiculously stupid in a number of different ways, and it's just not enjoyable in any way, shape, or form. It was actually pulled from theaters not too long after its release. This thing crashed and burned hard at the box office, and clearly it's kind of hard not to see why, because it's just not a good movie. It's just not an enjoyable film whatsoever. It's a lame comedy. It's just not a good film. I really don't have that much more to say about this one, except that it's just not a good comedy. Just not a good comedy at all. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the last film we have here, and that is The Moderns.
Keith Carradine, Linda Fiorentini, Genevieve Bujold, Geraldine Chaplin, Wallace Shawn, Kevin J. O'Connor, and John Lowe as Stone. In Alan Duvall's The Moderns.
Keith Carradine plays an expatriate American artist living in Paris among some of the noted artists and writers of the time, including Kevin J. O'Connor as Ernest Hemingway, Elsa Raven as Gertrude Stein, Ali Guiron as Alice B. Toklas, Nick is torn between his ex-wife Rachel, played by Linda Fiorentino, and Natalie DeVille, played by Geraldine Chaplin, who hire him to forge her paintings, and he must also contend with Rachel's current husband, played by John Lone, Bertram Stone, who does not know that his wife is still married to another man. Good cast overall. It also has Wallace Shawn as well as Genevieve Bujold, and it's directed by Alan Rudolph. Alan Rudolph's made a couple of really good movies that we talked about, not just here, but also on Time About the Movies, the regular show. And because of that, the film ends up working pretty well. In fact, this movie, it's one of those movies that was in development hell for a long time. It was developed back in the 1970s, which was really supposed to be shot back in 1977, but had to wait 10 years to actually get made. And as far as development hell projects goes, it's probably one of the better ones. It's a really good film talking about the period of the Lost Generation and doing stuff with modernist literature that even before Midnight in Paris did it well enough on its own merits, which Midnight in Paris is one of my favorite movies of all time, but this one does a pretty good job of handling that. They've got a lot of really good actors to play these roles. You do get invested in the storylines that's going on here, and there's a good writing and good directing here to keep the film afloat overall. I think it's a terrific film that I don't think anybody really ever talks about, honestly, but you should definitely check it out. It's definitely worth a watch indeed. The Moderns, Alan Rudolph with another good film on the show. So that's going to wrap Time About the Movies Flashback for this week. But next week we take a look at the weekend of April 8th, 1988 with 5 more movies, including the obvious Nightmare on Elm Street knockoff Bad Dreams, Steven Seagal's first major film role, Above the Law, George Burns and Charlie Schlauter at 18 again, The Light Horseman, and also Consuming Passions. 5 films in general we'll look at on the next episode, so thank you for watching, and as always, if you want to see more episodes like this, please click the place on the next page, check out the previous episode, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this. So, with that said, I'm off. I'll see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.